Should a European football team take on a star, but also super expensive Ford? How can a major milk producer reduce the green gas emissions from its production process? The CEO of a diversified Fortune 500 company receives a capital investment request from its computer game division for an amount that will triple its current production capacity. Should he approve it? BCG case interviews might seem impossible to answer when you're first starting out. But don't worry, in this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step everything you need to know to pass your BCG case interview and land that BCG offer. In this video, we'll walk you through step by step through BCG case interview example, one country eradicates polio. And if you stay until the end, I'll share with you my 4 tips for minimizing case interview math mistakes. Hi, my name is Davis, and if you're joining us today, smash that subscribe button, and every time there's a new video released about how to get your dream consulting offer like at BCG, you'll be the first to know. Let's start with our BCG case example. One country eradicates polio. Do you remember the 4 parts of a case interview that we discussed in the How to Land an Offer at BCG video? To recap, they are the opening, the structure, the analysis, and the recommendation. As always, the case begins with an opening. Your interviewer will start the case by reading a prompt to you. Your client is the health ministry of a small developing country. They want to roll out a polio vaccination program for young kids. How should they go about it, and what will it cost? Opening. The first thing you do is repeat the main information in the prompt to the interviewer to make sure you got it right and ask clarifying questions. If you don't know what polio is or how old, for example, the kids who are receiving the vaccines are, this is a great time for you to ask the interviewer. You should learn that polio is an infection caused by a virus that leads to paralysis, and your interviewer would tell you to assume we're targeting kids age 6 to 8. The location of the country does not particularly matter here. It's a good idea to understand how the client will evaluate if the initiative is successful or not. For example, you might ask the interviewer, what would success look like for this country's government? Is there anything besides cost that they're worried about? You'll learn that they simply care about reaching as many children as possible and to estimate the cost of this program. Structure. Once you have the opening, it's time to move on to the structuring phase of the case. You can ask for a few moments to lay down your thoughts. Use this time to build your structure. Notice the prompt here isn't your typical profitability case question, so using a standard framework here is not going to help you out. This is time for you to showcase your ability to come up with a tailored approach. Pro tip alert, if you're serious about being able to pass the case interview and learn how to think like a consultant, I highly encourage you to pause this video for about 60 to 90 seconds, as long as you need, and practice writing out a structure before I give you an example answer. Take a moment to pause this video and think about how you would actually approach this question yourself if this was a real interview and a prompt that you received. And of course, we'll walk through an example together afterwards. You can take your time, but I would aim for about 60 to 90 seconds here. And once you're ready, you can unpause the video. Since I'm here on a video, I'll be here when you come back. Once you have your structure, it's time to deliver it to the interviewer. What's important here is that you take a top-down approach. That is, when you're presenting your structure, you want to present it from the top all the way down. So you want to read each of the buckets at each of the levels instead of just reading it as you would a book. Here's a suggested answer, as well as how you can communicate this. In order to support the health ministry, with rolling out the vaccination program for children, as well as estimating the cost, I'd like to look at 3 different areas. The first area is logistics for the rollout. The second area is the financial considerations. And the third area is the non-financial considerations. First, let's look at the overall logistics of the program. These will be determined by 3 factors: the target population, the logistics requirements and associated costs, and the governance structure. For the target population first, we'll need to look at the program size and the ways to access that population. The program size depends on the number of kids we'll need to reach. Meanwhile, to determine the best way to access these kids, we'll want to look at the biggest population centers across the country to make sure that the population is aware of our program. Decide how kids will enroll in our program. For example, are the parents going to bring the kids to us, or are we going to go straight to the families? And consider any adjustments needed in the rural areas. Next, to establish the costs, we'll need to look at the logistics requirements. For example, do we need doctors, nurses, drivers, or even security guards? Do we need to build infrastructure, or do we already have existing buildings? What materials do we need? For example, we need the vaccines, but do we also need, for example, storage or any personal protective equipment? Finally, what do we need to do about transportation? Lastly, we want to make sure that the governance structure of the program makes sense for its success. This will depend on our client's capabilities. For example, if they've done other vaccination programs in the past, and if they already have a specialized staff. Or maybe we can even partner with other organizations such as NGOs or even private organizations. And we definitely need a clear accountability structure to make sure that the program actually gets the results we want. Second, I want to look at the financial considerations. In particular, I want to look into who will finance the program and what savings will come out of it. So how will it actually be funded? Do we have a budget? Do we need to apply for grants? Or is there some kind of cost sharing? What savings are likely to come from this program? How much will we save in health expenditures down the road with fewer sick children? Could we also use this program to test and vaccinate for other usual suspects among children's diseases? Third and lastly, I want to go over some non-financial considerations such as government buy-in and the public perception of the program? Do we have overall government buy-in? And what's the relations with the rest of the government? And do they see polio as a priority? And on the public perception, how does the general population view the health ministry in this country or even the vaccine? And could we leverage anything in our PR campaigns? So those are 3 areas I would like to consider. Unless the client has another preference, I suggest that we start by looking at the total target size of the program, because I want to know that the program is actually going to be large enough to make a huge impact. And if not, we can look at alternatives. So would the client have any data on this, on how many children we expect that our program would be able to reach? All right, what did you think? How did your answer compare to the example answer? The structure is pretty exhaustive and very tailored to our client here. Don't worry if you didn't come up with every bullet on your own. In real life, you only have 60 to 90 seconds on average to be able to write down all your thoughts for the case. So you wouldn't be expected to write full sentences. In fact, just a couple bullets with some words that give you a hint about what you're exactly going to present is more than sufficient. Note here that once I was done, I didn't wait for the interviewer to tell me what to do next. Instead, I offered a place to start our analysis. All right, let's move on to the analysis. By the way, if you're interested in becoming a management consultant, there's a link below in the description where you can book a free strategy session with my team. We'll walk you through how to land your offer at a dream consulting firm like BCG. Analysis. After you've offered your path forward, the first thing the interviewer would do is prompt you to brainstorm in depth the various ways that you could reach the kids. So if you've already alluded to this in your structure, you already have a head start. This is basically a brainstorming question. On those, your interviewer will rate you both on your structure and your creativity. Here's a pro tip. Always make sure that you're backing up your logic and articulating the why behind your ideas. So for example, you can use general knowledge, you can use analogies, or you can even use from past experiences. For example, you might say, I remember when I was a kid, I got my chickenpox vaccine at school. One way that you can break this down is into 2 buckets. One bucket of ideas could be how to get the kids to us, while the other one is how can we get to the kids? If you want to get to the kids, that means that you want to go where they are. That's schools, hospitals, or even their homes. If instead, though, you wanted the kids to come to us, you would need to reach the parents and convince them to bring them to us, which sounds a lot harder. Still, assuming that you want the kids to come to us, we could have them come to hospitals, pop-up locations in each neighborhood, or have primary care providers refer kids at yearly checkups. I'd like to also investigate whether it's possible in that country. The most pragmatic answer, of course, is to go straight to where kids are already spending the most amount of time. That is, in school. Once you're aligned on that with the interviewer, what would you do next? Remember the importance of driving the case? Since it sounds like schools are going to be the best way for us to reach children, I'd like to look at the logistics behind being able to do so. Do we know the total count of how many schools there are in the country? You'd then be handed a first exhibit, a map detailing the number of schools in each area of the country and the average number of students per school. When you see this exhibit, show that you understand the information it provides and how you could use it to drive the case forward. You could say, great, so this shows me the number of schools in the country and the number of students per school. I can see that there are 5 schools in Area 1, 3 in Area 2, 2 in Area 3, and 10 in Area 4. Each school has on average 400 students in our target age range. There are thus 20 schools with 400 students per school on average. A grade candidate will immediately comment on the number of students that we're reaching. In this case, it would be 20 times 400, which is 8,000. And then ask about the differences in different locations and how it would affect the logistics. Turns out there's none here. At this point, knowing that you're going to be targeting and touring the schools, an interviewer might turn to you and say, well, could you brainstorm some of the costs that might be associated with this? This is already in our structure from earlier, but you can give it a try here. Once satisfied, they'll give you a second exhibit, this time with the following information. In each area, there'll be a team comprised of 1 doctor, that's $50 per day, 4 technicians, $40 a day, 1 driver plus a vehicle, which is $110 a day, and the vaccines, which are $2 each. When you see this, you might comment on the slight vagueness that's associated with the technician's cost. Is it $40 a day for a single technician or $40 a day for all technicians? Yes, it's $40 per day for all 4 technicians, not just one of them. Now it's up to you to take the initiative to compute the total cost of the program. Take a break from this video, pause the video, take a minute or two to actually compute the cost yourself. Come back when you're done or you need a little bit of help. What do you notice? You're actually missing one important piece of information. That is, how many kids can the team actually see per day? In situations like these, the interviewer might leave out crucial information like this to see if you have an ability to be able to figure out what important piece of information is missing and ask for it. Because when you're actually doing the job of a consultant, the client's not going to immediately just give you every information, or the client might miss out on important information that you actually need for the analysis. So the interviewer here wants to know that you have an eye for knowing what kind of information is missing and being able to ask for it. Once you ask, you learn that on average, it takes 6 minutes for a technician to be able to deliver the vaccine to a kid. Great, so now we might also need to know how many hours per day does the technician actually work. While you might take an assumption, for example, let's say you assume 8 hours per day, it's better to ask the interviewer, even if you have an assumption. For example, in this case, let's say the interviewer comes back to you and says, well, it's actually going to be 5 working hours per day. Now we know everything that we need to finish out this calculation. Each technician can therefore see 10 kids per hour. Hence, you can vaccinate 40 kids per hour with a total of 4 technicians in the school. With 5 hours of work a day, that's 200 kids per day. That means exactly 2 days per school for each team. There are 20 schools at $200 per day per school in staff costs, and it takes 2 days per school. The total staff cost is $8,000 for 40 days of work. And of course, 20 schools times 400 students, that's 8,000 students, which represents $16,000 in vaccine costs since each vaccine is $2. The total cost of the program is $24,000 to tour all the schools at once. Whenever you get any kind of number, make sure to take a second to sanity check it. That is to think, does this number actually make sense in the context that I'm given? Big picture time, $24,000. Is it expensive or is it low? You might think, well, for a national program, it's probably low, and they only have 20 public schools. To the health ministry, is this a high number? Is this what they were aiming for? You want to be able to know in the context of the client if this number is high or low. You might also want to know, are all kids covered through this program by just going through the schools? Are these public schools? Are there other schools we need to consider? What's the absentee rate, for example? You might also comment on the overall timeline, which in this case, the largest area will be the one that is going to take the longest tour. So with 10 schools in this area, you might think, okay, assuming that everything else, transportation doesn't slow down and our logistics are fine from school to school, it might take about 20 working days to complete the program. Notice how here, by taking the math step by step, I was able to uncover missing information that I would need to ask the interviewer and to validate before computing the total cost of the program and to be able to help our client out. It also made the math a lot easier to follow. Without a structured approach to how you do math, you can easily miss a step, confuse the interviewer, or make a mistake and end up solving for the wrong question entirely. Recommendation. When you feel like you've laid out all the key facts of the case and crunched the numbers so you know what direction the client should take, you need to give the interviewer your final recommendation. Your answer should lead with the recommendation to the client and then detail the key reasons why you support that recommendation. It ends by mentioning any risks that might impact the client's results. In the next steps, you plan to mitigate the risk or to double down on the analysis. And there's no need to repeat every single line, every single figure, every single fact that you discovered in the case. Be succinct and think about what the main arguments are. The interviewer might prompt you like this. The right hand of the health minister walks into the test room and asks you about your findings before she jumps off to a final call with her boss. What do you tell her? So what would you say? Pause this video and give it a try, and then you'll come back and I'll share with you an example of how you could have wrapped up this case. So here's one potential answer that you could have given. You asked us to evaluate whether or not we should roll out a polio vaccination program for the children of this country, and if so, what would be the cost? We recommend doing so for children ages 6 to 8, particularly by going through their schools. We recommend this because, one, the total program would only cost $24,000. Second, we'll be able to complete the program within about 4 to 5 weeks. And third, we'll be able to reach 8,000 children as a result of this. The biggest risk that we see in this program is we haven't yet calculated the absentee rate for children, especially in the rural areas when it comes to attending school. If given more time, my team and I would love to be able to evaluate the absentee and see how it affects the program and also how to mitigate that. Congratulations, you made it through the entire BCG case, One Country Eradicates Polio. Because you made it to the end, I want to share with you my 4 tips for making sure that you minimize math mistakes during a case interview. It's hard for a lot of people to do math under pressure. So these steps will help you stay calm as well as structured and minimize the mistakes that you make. 1, be clear on what the calculation will tell you. Don't start just doing calculations. Know what business problem you're trying to solve for and how your math will give you insight to solve that problem. Share this with your interviewer. 2, structure your approach. Before you do any calculations, take a moment to walk the interviewer through the steps that you're going to take before you actually do the calculations. Oftentimes, when you're doing consulting math, there are several steps here, and if you miss one, it will mess up the entire equation. So you want to align with the interviewer first. 3, do the calculation step by step. Once you have your approach to the case math problem, do one calculation at a time to ensure accuracy. 4, explain the so what. Don't just wrap up by having an answer at the end. Think about, why does this actually matter for the client? How does it affect the client? And how does it affect the recommendation that you're going to have for the client? So there you have it. Everything you need to know to pass that BCG case interview. If you're 100% serious about becoming a management consultant, my team and I want to help you. If you follow the link in the description, you can book a free strategy session with my team where we're going to walk you through step by step how to land your dream consulting offer at a firm like BCG. Our proven process has helped over 600 people just like you land their dream consulting offer, and we want you to be our next success story. But you don't have to take my word for it. Here's a story of someone who went through our program and landed their dream offer.